Most of 2023 and just starting off 2024 so far, a lot of my work has been working with companies on CAPA and specifically their CAPA process, not necessarily working on individual CAPAs, but addressing some of the FDA findings that they may have gotten for their CAPA process itself. Much of it, as many of you may know me, I should introduce myself first. Anthony Cara. I'm the owner and principal consultant at Business Improvement Group, and I do get involved in a lot of quality type projects, predominantly in medical device, but other industries as well. And what I wanted to share today is that as I worked with several clients on helping fix the CAPA process, 5 of the common faults that I find leads to inadequate and deficient CAPA processes. And this may not necessarily tie in directly to the observations, audit findings, things of that nature. Generally, although some of them do, generally you'll get a broad finding and observation that CAPA process was not fully implemented, and usually with some objective evidence. Usually it's a missing record or inadequate investigation or what have you. But even as we're trying to fix the CAPA process per se, I find these 5 areas that teams tend to struggle with. So I wanted to share those with you, maybe as a form of a watch out, as well as some of the things to keep in mind as you navigate through your CAPA process. All right, so what we're going to cover this afternoon or this evening is why CAPA focus, right? Why do we want to kind of needle in on CAPA? Why we want to give it so much attention? What are expectations for your CAPA process? Just a real high level on problem solving and how that ties into our CAPA process, and then we'll jump into my top 5 list of common CAPA problem areas. So first off, the CAPA hot potato. If I don't think I've been in an organization yet where people are lining up to accept CAPAs. A lot of times, the folks who own a CAPA very often get voluntold that they're going to own this particular CAPA, and usually it gets tossed off and handed off. But it doesn't have to be that way. CAPA is a very important part of our quality management system. Unfortunately, and this is data straight from FDA. So if you are in medical device, you may be able to relate that CAPA process is maybe a challenge in your organization. If not, kudos. But it has shown to be the most frequent citation in 2023, and it typically, if you were to go year after year, it does tend to be among the top. It will be within the top 3. Last year happened to be the number cited. And even if you're not in med device, many organizations that have a formal quality management system in place will have a CAPA process. It's not just something required by FDA, but it is something that is inherent in any solid quality management system. Now, from the FDA's perspective, what are some of the expectations? So it's not necessarily verbatim, but the expectation is that manufacturers will maintain procedures, and when we say establish, it means actually execute procedures and provide records of objective evidence that the process is being followed. One is to analyze sources of quality issues, right? Being able to look across your quality system, look within your organization to identify where you may have some quality issues, escalate those into a CAPA process so that you can investigate, determine root cause. Once you have root cause, to identify actions for both the correction and prevention of reoccurrence of the issues. And then once you've implemented that, to verify or validate those corrective actions to demonstrate that that they can be effective without introducing any adverse effects. Then once that's been verified or validated, go ahead and permanently, I would say permanently, but formally implement those solutions in the form of corrections, corrective actions, and preventions. And then disseminate the information to relevant parties. Make sure that folks are aware of the changes that were implemented and such. And then there will be a feedback loop towards the end, typically when you're leaving the CAPA for demonstrating the effectiveness. The expectation is that there's a management review of the quality issues. So whether it's very often, your performance of your CAPA process will escalate into the formal management review session that's held by top leaders. And there's also typically an expectation that throughout the course of the year, your CAPA process has management oversight via CAPA review board or similar venue. And then, of course, all CAPA activities shall be documented. As we often say in our quality circles, if it's not documented, it didn't happen, right? So we want to make sure there's appropriate documentation. In the end, I mean, there's a lot of expectations and things of that nature. And if you look at similar quality management system standards, such as ISO 9001 or ISO 1345, you'll see similar type expectations. At the end of the day, I always like to boil it down and just say that CAPA is your formal process for solving quality problems. It's your problem-solving process. And that's why it's so important, because as we're navigating and we're working through delivering on customer needs, whenever there's an issue of some sort, we want to make sure that we give it appropriate attention and solve that problem, so that we're not continually burdening the patient, the customer with quality issues, and certainly if you are in med device or comparable industry, we're assuring the safety of the patient. So that's the CAPA process, and the importance of why we want to focus on that and make sure that if there are challenges in your CAPA area, that you'll definitely want to resolve those. And since the CAPA process is essentially a formal problem-solving process, want to walk through what that means, right? What does it mean to solve problems and things of that nature? And very fundamentally, I always like to break down a problem into three elements. All problems, in the end, should have these three basic elements. There are different frameworks and methodologies to address this, but I always like to boil it down to these simple three to help pace ourselves through the problem-solving process, including CAPA. So the first one is the issue itself, right? And that's, when you first hear of a problem, that's usually what we're talking about. We're talking about the issue. It's the pain point. It's the nonconformity. It's the symptom as specified by the customer or the problem owner. So it's this nagging symptom, if you will, of the problem. Now, that issue had to come about somehow, and that is the cause. The cause ultimately, the root cause ultimately, is going to have led to or essentially caused the issue. And this is typically determined by cause and effect analysis, right, or root cause analysis. And then once you have the cause, then and only then can you be talking about solutions, or at least effective solutions. We're going to talk a little bit later about before you even do your root cause analysis, there may be some actions, some type of quick fix solution, if you will, that can directly address your issue, correction that we talk about, where it'll at least contain the current issue at hand and stop it from propagating, and address a short-term need. However, it's not until we do root cause analysis, understand the causality of the problem or causality of the issue, and then we attack that with solutions to hopefully eliminate the chance of reoccurrence. However, what we'll see is that when we do implement our solutions, attacking the root cause, sometimes we can't get rid of it completely. So the strategy there then is when we are looking for solutions, either to eliminate, which is ideal. If you can't eliminate, at least reduce it, meaning that lower frequency of the problem occurring, or mitigate, right? Mitigate meaning that you may come into a situation where there's really not much you can do. The event is going to happen, but then you somehow lessen the impact when it does happen. So these are the essence. This is the essence of any problem-solving effort, and we're going to see as we go through, especially when I talk about some of the problem areas or the challenges that teams have had when executing CAPA in their CAPA process, that going back to these fundamentals is going to be key. Keeping these fundamentals in mind is going to be key to help work through those challenges. So without further ado, I want to go through my my top 5 countdown. These are the top 5 areas in the CAPA process where I'm personally finding teams struggling. Again, it usually shows itself by when I come in, not just trying to help teams remediate their CAPA process and update procedures and provide training and things of that nature. But as I stay on board and consult with the organization, I'll have, say, open office hours, and folks will come to me with CAPAs and ask some of these questions, which is great. They recognize the need and that there's a lack of understanding, and they're looking for guidance to work through some of these issues. And sometimes we find these where folks are not self-identifying, and as I maybe independently review a CAPA record, we'll see some of these misses as well. And again, this list is not meant to be most exhaustive, but some of the most common things. And if you can relate to these, hopefully you'll be able to take some of the learnings that I'm going to share today to help improve your CAPA process. So counting down the countdown, CAPA problem area number 5. And you're going to see that I tend to work backwards, right? Begin with the end in mind. And what I see very often is inadequate verification of effectiveness, or your organization may call it effectiveness verification, either way. That's usually that last check before you close out a CAPA, or when you're making the decision to close out the CAPA as effective or ineffective. That's that last check. So it's very important because this is going to determine the success of the CAPA. And I don't want to tread too lightly on this as far as, while the ultimate goal is to have effective CAPAs, it isn't necessarily meant to be done so superficially, meaning that the goal isn't just to pass a CAPA. The goal is to implement effective long-term solutions such that the problem does not surface again. I do see issues where one in and of itself, the verification of effectiveness test, or the methodology used for verification of effectiveness, is not going back to the original issue or the original problem statement. And that's a huge miss. Some organizations, they even go as far as saying every root cause needs a verification of effectiveness. And I often disagree with that statement, because I can have multiple causes that lead to a single type of problem. All right, let me take that back. We do want to demonstrate that addressing causes and such, right? That there may be different solutions and such, but it's not necessarily a one-for-one where every solution needs an independent verification of effectiveness. You may find that multiple solutions together as a system is required to eliminate or reduce the problem from reoccurring, and that's the effectiveness that you want to do. So you want to focus a little bit more on the issue statement, on demonstrating that your problem solving was effective in reducing the occurrence of the issue. When it comes to sampling, and we talked a little bit before, most of my background and a lot of presentations I've provided here is on statistical methods. This is where I get consulted with a lot as well, very often, as far as coming up with a valid statistical sampling plan for the verification of effectiveness. And very often we're seeing insufficient samples, either in the availability of the data or the duration of the verification of effectiveness period. Folks are feeling maybe a little bit pressure to close CAPA under a certain timeline, and as such may shorten their sampling period, which in turn gives insufficient samples or insufficient sampling period. So I do see folks struggling with the insufficient samples in the VOE, and similarly poor rationale for the thing that they're measuring or the samples that they have. And then inadequate records meaning that the documentation of it. We said before, if it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. Very often we're finding that when auditors come in and they're looking for objective evidence of the execution of the effectiveness to prove or demonstrate that the CAPA was effective, that documentation of the record is often lacking or sometimes missing. So I'm not just going to be beating up the CAPA processes. I'm going to be highlighting these are some of the problems that we're seeing, and some of the good things that we could be doing better to help alleviate that. Right. One, first and foremost, if we go back to that simplified problem-solving diagram that I have, a proper EV or proper effectiveness verification or verification effectiveness should tie back to the issue, right? So once you've implemented a solution, we should be coming up with a way of measuring the original issue and demonstrating that has been either eliminated, reduced, or at least mitigated. And the sampling plan that we use in that EV should be risk-based. So very often we want to understand what is the risk of this problem happening again, put together appropriate sampling plan and duration, looking at the appropriate data, and then documenting that protocol, documenting that approach with rationale, and providing documented supporting evidence, both of the plan as well as the results once performed. So working our way back into the CAPA process, you'll see almost every phase is going to get touched, if not every phase. CAPA problem area number 4, inadequate corrective actions. And I was kind of thinking a couple different ways of looking at this one, inadequate solutions and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, most CAPAs, I know there's a PA portion of CAPA, preventive actions, but most CAPAs are often implemented because we are seeking a corrective action. What I mean by that is by the very definition, corrective actions are actions that we implement to prevent reoccurrence of a problem that happened at least once before, whereas preventive actions are actions that we implement to prevent the future reoccurrence of a problem we may never have seen yet. So very often, at least organizations I've been in, there's enough problems going around that the teams are focused. There's a lot of effort on CAPAs that are CA focused and not necessarily PA focused. So with that said, it's very important that we get down the right definition of corrective actions and that we structure them appropriately in the way to address. So what I often see is when I am reviewing a CAPA record or when I'm working with the CAPA team, the solutions that they're coming up with many times are more corrections than corrective actions, meaning they are focusing a little bit more on fixing the direct issue or the nonconformity at hand and not necessarily thinking about how to prevent the future reoccurrence. So that's probably the biggest miss here. When we are creating a list of solutions, again, everybody, it's intended well, and everybody has good intentions as far as how we could make things better, but they don't necessarily trace back to causes, meaning that we come up with a lot of good ideas of how we could make things better, but we're not taking the time to map that back to the work that we did in the previous phase and say that this is a solution that will directly address this cause. And we're either lacking and missing missing good solutions to causes, or we're doing a lot of work, which is maybe good work, but not necessarily within the scope of the CAPA. Doesn't necessarily direct the causes. So we're seeing some misses there. Inadequate V&V, meaning that not to differentiate between the verification of effectiveness that happens at the end of the CAPA. Typically prior to implementation, we want to do some sort of verification or validation activity before we implement. One, to demonstrate that the solution does have the promise to be effective, but then two, that last bullet point, we end up missing something and we introduce adverse effects, meaning that in my best attempt to try to fix something, I end up breaking something else or causing a problem somewhere else. And again, some of that could be non-quality related. For example, a few years ago, I was on a project where a corrective action that was implemented, the minute it went effective, meaning implemented and in use, it immediately shut down the production line. That was an adverse effect. Slight changes to efficiencies and things of that nature, it's a business decision, but when you completely shut down a production line because of your quality solution that you implemented, that's an adverse effect that should have been detected during proper V&V activities. So these are some of the things that we're seeing when teams are in that solution or implementation mode. And the best way to combat that is, again, going back to the clear definitions and the intent, right? Between those three types of solutions, we have corrections. Those are direct actions that are intended to eliminate a nonconformity. These are the quick fixes and temporary, and they do have their place in the CAPA process. When we first start the CAPA, and you have a nonconformity, you want to be talking about your immediate actions, your corrections, and your containments. What do I need to do while the team is investigating to put in the long-term fix? What can I do in the short term? So there is a place for corrections, but we want to make sure that we're not doing these types of activities to address the causes. Once we identify causes, now I want to talk about my corrective and preventive actions. And here too, I have seen, it's not as frequent, but I have seen some maybe confusion, if you will, between corrective and preventive actions. But if we think about the definition of the corrective action, is something that will prevent a problem that has been demonstrated to happen before. So we want to prevent the reoccurrence, as opposed to the preventive action, which is preventing a future occurrence that never happened before. Then we could assign it appropriately in our CAPA. Ideally, we want to at least, at a minimum, have a corrective action so that the problem that initiated the CAPA in the first place is getting addressed. But then when you are doing your investigation and you take a holistic view, if you will, in your root cause investigation, once you've investigated root cause for how your problem happened, you do want to take a step back, take a systemic view and say, okay, it happened here. Could this, knowing what I know now about this cause, could this issue have occurred somewhere else and I just didn't know about it? Or maybe there's a risk of it happening somewhere else, but just didn't happen yet, didn't materialize yet. Those are times when you can start looking at preventive actions. But first and foremost, you want to hit ground zero first. You want to make sure that you're addressing where the original nonconformity was, and you do that through, as I said before, corrections to address the immediate nonconformity, and corrective actions to prevent future reoccurrence in that area. And then you may consider preventive actions in other areas as well. So now that we know how to solve the problem, let's take a step back and look at, did we determine the root cause of the problem so that we can come up with appropriate solutions? CAPA problem area number 3, inadequate root cause analysis. And this is, I'll spend a lot of time here as well, because frankly, this is where a lot of the work in CAPAs happen. This is very often where when I see CAPA extensions or CAPAs going overdue and things of that nature, folks are spending a lot of time here. I'll partly explain why here, and just to foreshadow a little bit, there's some of it's going to be caused because of the next problem area that I'm going to share. But for now, once I'm in the root cause analysis phase, challenges that we see is just superficial investigations. They're kind of just either just scratching the surface and not necessarily digging down deep enough. They'll come up with causes that aren't actionable. That there's a reason or excuse or blame or what have you, right? Or just something that there's nothing that could be done about it, and that becomes a problem. There's weak or no cause and effect analysis, and as I go down my list, we're going to see some of the things that lead into that. But it could just be subjective, things that folks just feel that this could have led to the nonconformity, or that could have caused to the nonconformity, and they'll make that statement with no strong objective evidence to back it up. For those that have done root cause analysis before and have owned CAPAs, you know that there's a vast toolbox out there. And the fact of the matter is, since there are so many tools out there, not everybody could always be proficient at every one. And we either may not be using the right tool, or we may not be using the tool correctly. So the inadequate use of tools leads to inadequate root cause analysis. And this one's a big pet peeve of mine, and I know some people get upset when I say this, right? But I think there's an overkill of using fishbone and 5 whys. I'll go to organizations, and a majority of the CAPAs are in one organization. Actually, every single one of their CAPAs, their only tools that they use is fishbone and 5 whys. And just like any other toolbox, each tool has an intended purpose, an intended use. And not all problems necessarily need the same tools. There are other tools that are out there, very good tools that are out there. And fishbone and 5 whys is not going to solve every single one of your problems. Don't get me wrong, they're good tools in and of themselves, but they're not appropriate for every application. So what do? Right? Root cause, first and foremost, it should be very systematic in nature, right? We want to take a progressive approach. I think a lot of times what happens is teams go in maybe with a little bit of bias too, where they already know what the problem. I already know what the problem is. We've been struggling with this for years. I know the cause. That may be true. But if we've gotten to the point of a CAPA, and if you've already known this for years and we're still having the problem and it's in a CAPA, I'll tell you what, let's use the process. Let's take some time. Let's identify all potential causes, right? Everything on the table. Let's pull together a cross-functional team, and let's identify all the possible causes. We're not going to judge them just yet, right? We're just going to, all ideas are good ideas at this point. What are all the possible ideas? What are all the possible potential causes that could have led to this nonconformity? Right, and then from there, now we start. Once we've exhausted that brainstorming activity and we've collected all those ideas, then from there we could organize and prioritize those and begin to systematically whittle that down. Through the process of elimination is always a great technique, right? Which ones can you easily rule out, and then which ones can you maybe collect some evidence to support and help demonstrate. We test then, so we'll prioritize, we'll try to weed out some of the less likely ones first and foremost. We don't completely shoot them down, right? We kind of just park and lot them for now, but we'll focus in on ones that are most likely, and then we'll run them through tests. And that could look like an observational study where you just, you already have data and you're going to analyze that data, or you're visually going to observe a process, or experimental studies where you actually design an experiment and you change some parameters and you collect the data and you analyze the data to determine if there truly is a cause and effect relationship. Those are great because that now you're quantitatively, analytically demonstrating cause effect analysis. Through the testing, and you're ruling things in or out, or either supporting that it's not a cause, or having some support that it still is a cause. Once you have those confirmed causes, you want to identify or categorize those. And some of them are depending upon the and again, if you are doing an analytical study, right, the correlation coefficient can give you the strength of that cause and effect relationship. And something that's weak or still still kind of let's just say weak for now, right? Weak or likely, we'll call those possible causes. If there's something that's a little bit more moderate, or something that happens in together with something else, we'll call those contributing causes. And what I like to call the smoking gun, right? The thing that you can really nail down to, and that is that switch that when you turn it one way or the other, you turn the problem on and off, right? Those are generally your root causes. So you want to properly categorize those so that we can set expectations as far as how do I address those. And then the quality tools, as I mentioned before, there are many more than this. I think ASQ actually, if for my members out there, ASQ recently announced that they're releasing a new edition of the quality toolbox, I believe it's called. Great reference. I have the original, and you better believe I'll be picking up that copy as well, because it's got a ton of tools. It's always great to kind of flick through and pick up some new tools for new applications and things of that nature. But even without that vast toolbox, right, there's at least these 7 basic quality tools that may look familiar to you, that we definitely want to become familiar with and use these within our CAPA process as well. Now, for the fishbone diagram folks out there that maybe got a little upset about what I said earlier, it's not the best tool for every job, but it still is a very powerful tool. It's on the list. So it is on the list of 7, together with check sheets, Pareto diagrams. I tend to put run charts, control charts together. They're basically time charts with looking for trends over time. Process flow diagrams, we have your fishbone diagram, and histograms and scatter plots. Scatter plots are awesome because that's the one where you actually have 2 variables, and this is where you can demonstrate, if you have measurable data, the strength of a cause and effect relationship. So like I said, follow a systematic approach and use appropriate tools. Get familiar with enough tools that that you have an arsenal at your fingertips for the different types of problems you may come across in your CAPA process. Counting down, CAPA problem area number 2, inadequate problem statement. Let's see if I put that slide in there. I did. Okay. Being able to solve a problem, right? It's only as good as how well you state the problem. So I do find a lot of teams, I'll go back to that problem area number 3, a lot of teams struggle with the root cause analysis because the problem statement, they may know the tools and they may have the methodology and all that, but they really didn't start off with a good problem statement. And if you don't have a good problem statement, you're not going to be able to do an effective, you're not going to be able to do an effective investigation. And 2, and I didn't talk about this before, but I find very often when folks come to me to consult as far as putting together a sampling plan for their VOE, by not having a good problem statement, they have a very difficult time determining a VOE strategy to get them out of the CAPA. Because the problem wasn't clearly stated objectively, we don't have a good objective way of saying that we're in a better state. So this one it's very close to number 1 on my list, right? Inadequate problem statement. Probably thinking to yourself, what could be number 1 above that? But you may have another one. But inadequate problem statement. And again, I was emphasizing mainly the importance of it, right? By having a good problem statement, you help the team do a good root cause investigation. You also help the team later on with the way out. I'm usually, to be honest with you, when I'm putting together a problem statement, I'm already thinking about my VOE strategy as I'm crafting my problem statement. I want to make sure that I give our team a winnable game, right? I want to give them a way out. I basically set the expectation. I say, okay, this is the problem that we have. This is a level of performance that's non-conforming, and I'll state it in a way to where later on you can show me a level of performance that's better than that. Doesn't have to be eliminated, but you can at least show me that you're in a level of performance that's better. What are some of the, so aside from that, I mean, what are some of those bad things that you may see in a problem statement? Going back to my simplified version of issue, cause, and a solution, problem statement should only be about the issue. It should only be about the non-conformity. I've seen some problem statements where we assume causality or we assume a solution already. That tightens the scope, and it kind of puts the investigation team on a narrow path, which may not be the correct path. So you don't want to introduce any bias by assuming any causes or solutions in your problem statement. They could be missing key elements of the problem statement, clues, if you will, for the investigator, and we'll see those in the next slide or two. And then just improper scope. Like I said before, sometimes it's too narrow in that even if you did fix this very narrow scoped problem, it wouldn't have enough of an impact to really make a difference. Or worse, well, I don't know which is worse, but probably the second one is worse, right? And that it's so wide that you never get a chance to fix anything. So, in the first case, you may get improvements by 1,000 cuts, right? Incremental improvements. You won't get systemic improvement, but you could get incremental improvements. But yeah, if it's too broad, folks struggle, right? They're not able to do an effective investigation. Even if they do, they're not able to come up with a solution that can reach so broadly. And it's so broad, once again, you can't even measure a level of improvement. So good problem statement, focus on the issues, some of the key, make sure that we cover all the key elements, the clues that we want to give the investigator, and we'll talk about those with the proper scope. And this is kind of a classic quote, problem well stated is a problem half solved. So if we take a little time in the CAPA initiation phase is usually very quick, usually within a week of identifying a problem, that there's a problem, it gets reviewed at the CAPA board and it gets escalated to CAPA. And at that point is when we should be putting together the problem statement, right? We don't need a lot of time. A lot of time I find that, you collect some of the data, you have some of the preliminary data, spend half hour to an hour, right? But take the time to put good effort in, because that's going to set the tone for the rest of your CAPA. So what are those elements that I talked about? These are the minimum. I've seen different versions of this, but I always consider these the minimum elements that you want to include in your problem statement. I call it the 4W plus 1H, right? It's first, what is the issue, right? What specifically is the issue or the nonconformity? Who identified it? Again, now these are clues. These are clues. I could always go back to an individual person who identified it. It'll give me a clue as far as if I know who identified it, what was going on at the time, right? So it starts giving me clues as far as what could have transpired that led to the nonconformity. Where was it identified? And where could be anywhere. Where could be physically, where geographically. It could be physically where in your plant. It could be where in the process. It could be where in your system, right? Is it, was it in Agile or was it in TrackWise? Use some liberties there, but try to point the investigator, give them some clues as far as where this problem was identified and when was it identified. Once again, when could be when during the process, when as far as during the day, during the shift, when could be a date, when could be a range of dates. If it was a single event that happened on this date, put that date. if it was a single, if it was something that happened over a range of dates, put those dates. Those are going to be clues, right? When your investigator is setting up a timeline of what happened, having that date and being able to nail that down is going to be important for them. And then how many were identified? This goes back to the VOE question, right? If I could demonstrate how frequent this occurs or how many units were included within, now I have something measurable that serves as my baseline level of performance before the CAPA. And then afterwards, I'm able to demonstrate, hopefully, if effective, a reduced or eliminated measure of that specific nonconformity. So these are all key elements. You don't want to miss any one of them because, like I said, missing any one of these will impose some of those other challenges that we discussed earlier, whether I'm investigating or trying to come up with solutions or trying to verify the solution at the end. All right, so maybe not necessarily within your CAPA process, but CAPA process is a very people/resource intensive process. And what I see very often is inadequate resourcing. Okay? And that comes in a couple different flavors. One is just inadequate training. We talked a little bit before about giving people CAPAs who may not necessarily be fully versed in the tools that are needed to investigate that CAPA. So provide training. Make sure that that appropriate level of training or that the skills that are required in that CAPA are available to the CAPA team. And it's not just root cause analysis tools, right? I mean, it could be other tools as well. Project management tools for some of your bigger CAPAs and things of that nature. But when we are assigning resources or onboarding team members to support our CAPA, let's take some time to make sure that they're trained to do the task that we're being asked, that we're asking them to do. Wrong functions involved, right? Meaning that ideally you want to have cross-functional team members. You want to have team members that experience the pain of the problem itself. You want to have team members that may be contributing to that issue, and you want to have team members that can solve the problem, right? So you want to make sure that you have that good cross-functional representation, and very often we find that to be lacking as well. What's more concerning is that, on one hand, folks will say, Anthony, this is not true, right? CAPA is a high priority in my organization. I know because I'm always getting asked about my CAPAs. I have to report out my CAPAs and things of that nature. But beyond that meeting, when you're reporting out on that CAPA, what's really happening, right? When the work needs to be done, is your team there available supporting you? Or is your team off working on other things that's their priority? And very often I'm finding the latter to be the case, in that, some team members, even if they're assigned to a CAPA team, in the meeting, it sounds like it's the highest priority, but in reality, throughout the day, 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, 10 hours, right? Depending, how much, right? Time is being spent elsewhere and it's not being spent on the CAPA. And then poor planning and tracking of the CAPA itself. And some of these kind of feed into each other, right? If folks aren't given enough time to work on it, they don't have time to put together a good plan or to track progress and things of that nature. So what do we do about it? First up, get training, right? And again, root cause analysis training is an obvious choice. But there are other trainings as well. When you're building your team, and again, it's kind of hard with a CAPA to some extent, but in your organization, you probably see that there's certain flavors of CAPAs. And if you've been in the CAPA process long enough, that certain reoccurring themes come up. Are folks trained to that? Are folks trained to help support that? I'll give you a hint, right? If it keeps reoccurring, there may be an opportunity for us here, right? So, definitely look at what level of training can help skill up the team a little bit more to prepare them for effective CAPA execution. And make it a top priority. These this goes a little bit beyond, right? As you're executing and things like that, right? But certainly communicate. If if you are on a CAPA team and you're getting the pull, you're not getting the resources, right? Use some of the the channels, the escalations, and things of that nature. And if you're a leader in an organization, right? Just be honest with yourself and ask if what you're saying as far as CAPA is a priority. Are your actions and other are your actions and your other decisions and such supporting that statement, right? So because I can tell you, I do see very often that in organizations, while we say it's a priority, it usually isn't until the last moment, right? And that's where you get that last push of not working on my CAPA, not working on my CAPA, not working on my CAPA. It's due next week, and everybody scrambles to try to get it done. And then I have one bonus, right? So we ran completely, through the CAPA process, right? From and again, this time I'll walk it forward, right? Define the good problem, set me up for a good investigation, use good tools and methodology for an investigation, know what types of solutions are out there, and make sure that I'm addressing the problem with appropriate solutions, and measure the effectiveness. And if you want to do that, resource it accordingly. The bonus one is, should it even be a CAPA, right? There are some times where we are struggling with resources and things like that, or we don't quite see a way out. You have to ask yourself a question: if what was escalated to a CAPA really should have been a CAPA in the first place. And again, if you start seeing this reoccurring theme of closing CAPAs with no actions, or just stagnating CAPAs, and the team just has no way of setting forward, right? Just, I'm not saying this is always the case, right? But if you are seeing a theme of that, you may want to just take a look at your CAPA process and determine, are we promoting appropriate type problems into our CAPA process? So that's it. That's my top 5 list. As far as CAPAs, and again, this is experience from working directly with CAPA teams to help them fix their CAPA processes. Generally, after they've gotten their the 483 and they they were kind of told that they have to fix their CAPA process. So these are the areas that even afterwards, we do see teams kind of continue to struggle with. With that said, I'll open it up for questions. I think may have been questions coming in the chat.